The biting wind whipped across the desolate, snow-covered expanse of East Berlin, each gust a mournful whisper through the skeletal trees. A lone figure, Agent Kestrel, stumbled through the deepening drifts, his breath pluming in ragged clouds before him. His movements were jerky, desperate, a grim ballet of one pursued. A dark, wet stain bloomed across the side of his heavy winter coat, a stark crimson against the pristine white, and his hand clutched a blood-soaked satchel to his chest as if his very life depended on its contents. Fear, cold and absolute, mingled with a burning desperation in his eyes, reflecting the bleak landscape around him. He pushed forward, each step an agony, until his legs finally gave out. He collapsed, a heavy thud muffled by the snow, his body a dark silhouette against the encroaching twilight. The satchel, jarred loose from his weakening grasp, slid across the icy crust, coming to rest just before the camera, its flap slightly ajar. Inside, nestled amongst other cryptic items, lay a hand-drawn map, its lines intricate and foreboding. Far from the frozen grip of the Cold War's final gasps, Silas, a man whose face bore the indelible etchings of countless battles fought in the shadows, lived a life of deliberate isolation. He resided in a forgotten corner of Europe, a small, unassuming cottage nestled amidst rolling hills, his days marked by the predictable rhythm of nature rather than the unpredictable chaos of espionage. The ghosts of past betrayals, particularly those from the Cold War era, were his constant companions, whispering doubts and regrets into the quietude of his existence. He was a man who had seen too much, lost too many, and now sought only oblivion in the mundane. Then, one crisp morning, the fragile peace was shattered by the arrival of a package. It was nondescript, wrapped in plain brown paper, yet its contents would shatter Silas's carefully constructed world. Inside, he found Agent Kestrel's personal effects, a battered compass, a worn leather-bound journal, and, most disturbingly, the enigmatic map. A note, tucked beneath the journal, bore the familiar, elegant script of a former colleague, a man Silas had once trusted implicitly, now long deceased. The message was brief, urgent, hinting at a larger conspiracy and imploring Silas to investigate Kestrel's death. Kestrel, it revealed, had been searching for answers, and his demise was no accident. Initially, Silas recoiled from the summons, a deep-seated weariness settling over him. He had sought to escape the shadows, to bury the past, not exhume it. But the map, with its intricate details and cryptic symbols, held a strange, magnetic pull. Hidden within its folds, a tiny, almost imperceptible message, written in Kestrel's own hand, confirmed Silas's growing unease. He knew, it simply stated. Kestrel, a bright young agent Silas had once mentored, a protégé whose potential Silas had seen firsthand, had been more than just a colleague. He was a connection to a time Silas had tried so desperately to forget. A spark of unresolved duty, a flicker of personal connection ignited within Silas, rekindling embers he thought long dead. The map's first clue pointed to a seemingly innocuous cafe in Vienna, a city steeped in history and, Silas knew, a known dead-drop location during the Cold War. The irony was not lost on him. Vienna, a city of waltzes and intrigue, now held the key to Kestrel's last desperate act. Fueled by a desire for truth, and perhaps a faint hope for redemption from his own past failures, Silas made the reluctant decision to embark on the investigation. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. As he prepared to leave his isolated sanctuary, a fleeting shadow caught his eye. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the light outside his window. A dark sedan, parked a little too perfectly down the lane, its occupants obscured by tinted glass. Silas's instincts, honed over decades of vigilance, screamed a silent warning. He was already being watched. The game, it seemed, had begun anew. The chill of Vienna's early morning air bit at Silas's face as he stepped off the train. A familiar, unsettling sensation that mirrored the unease swirling within him. The city's elegant facades, a tapestry of Baroque grandeur and imperial history, seemed to shimmer with an almost deceptive beauty, masking a labyrinth of Cold War secrets that pulsed beneath its polished exterior. Every shadow held a potential watcher, every hurried step a possible pursuit. He felt the oppressive weight of the past immediately, a palpable presence that clung to the cobblestone streets and whispered from the ornate architecture. This was not a place for respite, but for remembrance and reckoning. He navigated the bustling streets with the practiced anonymity of a phantom, his senses sharpened, his awareness constantly scanning. The cafe, nestled on a quiet side street, appeared exactly as described in Kestrel's map. Unassuming, timeless, a relic from a bygone era. Inside, the scent of strong coffee and stale tobacco hung heavy in the air, a sensory echo of countless clandestine meetings. Silas chose a table in the corner, his back to the wall, his eyes sweeping over the few patrons, each face a potential puzzle piece or a hidden threat. No one waited for him. The designated rendezvous was empty. A flicker of disappointment, quickly replaced by a surge of grim determination, crossed his features. He remembered Kestrel's meticulous nature, his penchant for intricate details. Following the subtle instructions etched into the map's margin, Silas discreetly felt beneath the worn wooden table. His fingers brushed against a loose tile. With a practiced movement, he pried it open, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside lay a microfiche and a folded, coded message. Back in the relative anonymity of his rented room, Silas set to work. Deciphering the code was a painstaking process, a dance between memory and logic, recalling the arcane ciphers of his active years. The message, when finally unveiled, sent a shiver down his spine. It referred to Project Nightingale, a name that resonated with a distant, painful memory. He dimly recalled the operation, a top-secret defection attempt from decades prior, which had been abruptly and catastrophically terminated, leaving behind a trail of heavy casualties and unanswered questions. The microfiche, when viewed through a makeshift projector, confirmed his fears. It contained grainy, black-and-white photographs of key players. A younger, earnest Kestrel, his eyes alight with youthful idealism, and a shadowy figure, his features deliberately obscured, known only as the Weaver. The name itself conjured images of intricate plots and tangled deception. As Silas left the cafe, the microfiche and message now safely secured, a subtle shift in the rhythm of the street caught his attention. A man, seemingly engrossed in a newspaper, adjusted his position a fraction too quickly. Another, lingering by a flower stall, made eye contact for a split second too long. Silas's instincts screamed. He was being followed. The pursuit began subtly, a game of cat and mouse through Vienna's winding alleys and crowded squares. He quickened his pace, ducking into an arcaded passage, merging with a tour group, his heart pounding a furious rhythm against his ribs. The chase escalated, the shadows growing longer, the pursuers bolder. He narrowly evaded an ambush in a bustling marketplace, a sudden jostle, a dropped bag of fruit, creating just enough chaos for his escape. He realized then, with chilling clarity, that the stakes were far higher, the danger far more immediate than he had initially dared to imagine. The decoded message also contained a cryptic reference to the Weaver's Thread, a lead that pointed Silas towards an old, abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of the city. The location stirred another memory from his active days, a known clandestine meeting point, a place where secrets were spun and destinies unraveled. He approached the factory under the cloak of twilight, its skeletal silhouette stark against the fading sky. The air inside was heavy with dust and the ghosts of forgotten industry. He moved through the cavernous space, his footsteps echoing eerily, until he discovered a hidden vault, its heavy metal door now pried open, a gaping maw of emptiness. Whatever had been stored there was gone. The only thing left behind, lying amidst the debris, was a single, tarnished locket. Its surface was cold to the touch, and engraved upon it, Silas noticed with a jolt of recognition, was a familiar symbol. The very same symbol he had seen etched onto Kestrel's blood-stained map. The threads of the past were indeed beginning to weave a terrifying tapestry. The locket, cool and heavy in Silas's palm, held a faded photograph of a young woman, her features softened by time and the passage of years. Her identity remained a mystery, her face obscured by the photograph's age, yet the symbol etched into the locket's surface resonated deeply within Silas. It was the distinct insignia of a defunct intelligence unit, one he himself had been a part of during the height of the Cold War. A clandestine group specializing in the most dangerous, deep cover operations. A unit whose existence was officially denied, whose agents vanished into the shadows, leaving no trace. The discovery sent a ripple of unease through him. Kestrel's connection to such a unit suggested a far more intricate and perilous history than Silas had initially comprehended. Silas began to painstakingly piece together the scattered fragments of Project Nightingale, the catastrophic operation that had haunted his subconscious for decades. He accessed old, encrypted files, cross-referenced forgotten reports, and consulted his own meticulously kept, albeit unofficial, archives. Project Nightingale, he now recalled with chilling clarity, had been an extraordinarily ambitious plan to extract a high-ranking Soviet scientist, a defector promising invaluable intelligence. But the mission had gone catastrophically wrong, dissolving into a bloody ambush that cost the lives of several highly trained agents, including a close friend of Silas's, a man whose memory still pricked at the edges of his piece. The official conclusion had been a compromised operation, a leak from within, but the true extent of the betrayal had always remained shrouded in secrecy. Through hushed conversations with former contacts, men and women who still operated on the fringes of the intelligence world, and by carefully decrypting fragments of Kestrel's coded messages, Silas uncovered the first devastating twist. The Weaver was not a single individual, as previously believed, but a chilling code name for a sophisticated network of moles deeply embedded within their own organization. These traitors had systematically sabotaged operations, fed disinformation, and eliminated threats to their shadowy agenda. One of the faces in the microfiche, a man Silas remembered as a seemingly loyal and dependable agent named Anton, was now revealed as a key player in the Weaver's insidious network. Anton, who Silas had believed to be a casualty of Project Nightingale, presumed dead in the chaotic aftermath, was, in fact, a betrayer, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The revelation was a bitter pill, tainting the memory of a fallen comrade. The deeper Silas delved, the clearer Kestrel's true mission became. Kestrel wasn't merely investigating a historical failure. He was actively trying to expose the remaining members of the Weaver's network, those who had evaded detection for decades and continued to operate within the corridors of power. Kestrel's map, Silas now understood, was not just a cryptic drawing, but a meticulously compiled ledger, a dangerous document detailing their hidden assets, their clandestine safe houses, and their illicit connections. It was a roadmap to dismantling an entrenched conspiracy. Then came the most agonizing revelation, a personal betrayal that struck at the very core of Silas's being. He uncovered irrefutable evidence suggesting that his own mentor, Elias Thorne, a man he had revered and trusted implicitly, the architect of his career, might have been involved in the extensive cover-up of Project Nightingale's failure. Worse, the evidence hinted at Thorne's possible orchestration of the betrayal itself, or at least a complicity that allowed it to happen. This gut-wrenching discovery deeply shook Silas, shattering his perception of loyalty, truth, and the unwavering bonds he believed existed within their secretive world. The ground beneath his feet felt unstable, the foundations of his past crumbling into dust. As Silas grappled with this profound disillusionment, his comms device, an old, secure model he rarely used, buzzed with an incoming message. The sender was anonymous, the voice digitally altered, cold, and devoid of emotion. "The past never stays buried," the voice rasped, a chilling whisper that seemed to echo in the empty room. "You're digging in the wrong grave." Attached to the message was a photograph. It was a recent, high-resolution image of his isolated cabin, his sanctuary, taken from an unusual angle. The message was clear, unambiguous. His quiet refuge was no longer safe. They knew where he was, and they were watching. The hunt had turned. The chilling photograph of his cabin, a stark reminder of his vulnerability, solidified Silas's resolve. The time for reflection was over. The time for action had arrived. His former mentor, Elias Thorne, now lived in comfortable, almost opulent retirement, nestled within a secluded villa high in the Swiss Alps. It was a retreat designed for peace, but Silas knew it was where he would find the answers he desperately sought. The journey was long, winding through snow-capped passes and past picturesque villages, each mile deepening the knot of anticipation and dread in Silas's stomach. He approached Thorne's villa under the cover of a moonless night, the silence of the mountains broken only by the crunch of his boots on fresh snow. The confrontation with Thorne was as tense and emotionally charged as Silas had anticipated. Thorne, his once sharp eyes now somewhat dulled by age and perhaps by guilt, initially greeted Silas with a forced cordiality that quickly dissolved under Silas's direct, unwavering gaze. The younger man laid out the evidence, the fragments of Kestrel's map, the microfiche, the deciphered messages, the devastating implications of Project Nightingale's true failure. Thorne, initially defensive, his denials weak and unconvincing, eventually crumbled. The weight of decades of unspoken secrets, of complicity and cover-up, visibly pressed down on him. He confessed, his voice a hoarse whisper, to his involvement in the cover-up, not out of malice, but out of fear and a desperate attempt to protect a system he still, misguidedly believed in. He had been blackmailed, he admitted, into protecting the true orchestrator of Project Nightingale's catastrophic failure, a powerful figure operating within the very heart of their own government. Then, with a shuddering breath, Thorne revealed the master's identity, a name that sent a cold shock through Silas. Eleanor Vance. The name resonated with a terrifying familiarity. Eleanor Vance, now a highly respected and immensely influential diplomat, a woman whose public image was one of unwavering integrity and astute political prowess, had been a rising star during the Cold War. It was she, Thorne confessed, who had orchestrated the betrayal of Project Nightingale. Her motives, Thorne explained, were not ideological, but purely opportunistic. Vance had seen an opportunity to eliminate rivals, consolidate her own power base, and ascend the treacherous rungs of the intelligence hierarchy. She had sacrificed loyal agents, including Kestrel's sister, for personal gain, covering her tracks with meticulous precision for decades, building her empire on a foundation of lies and blood. She was Kestrel's ultimate target, the true monster he had been hunting. Silas now understood the full, tragic scope of Kestrel's final mission. Kestrel's map was not merely a historical document. It was a desperate attempt to expose Vance, to prevent her from further manipulating global events. She was, at that very moment, on the verge of a major international negotiation, one that held the potential to destabilize an entire region, all for her own cynical agenda. Kestrel, in his relentless pursuit of justice for his sister and the other fallen agents, had gathered irrefutable evidence against Vance. a collection of documents and recordings that could finally bring her down. Thorne, his confession a heavy burden lifted, seemed to sag with a mixture of relief and profound regret. He was about to reveal the precise location of Kestrel's hidden evidence to finally unburden himself completely, when a sharp crack echoed through the crisp mountain air. A red stain blossomed on Thorne's chest, and his eyes, wide with sudden shock, fixed on Silas before glazing over. Thorne collapsed, a final guttural gasp escaping his lips. A sniper! Silas instinctively ducked, the sound of the shot still ringing in his ears. He scrambled for cover, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Vance's reach, he realized with a chilling certainty, was far greater, far more ruthless than he had ever imagined. They had found Thorne, and they would surely find him next. The hunt had indeed turned, and Silas was now the prey. The game had just become deadly. The sniper's bullet, meant for Silas, had instead claimed Elias Thorne, leaving Silas reeling from the sudden, brutal violence. Vance's chilling message, delivered through the rifle scope, resonated with deadly clarity. She knew. She knew he was coming, and she would stop at nothing. Kestrel's map, now a blood-stained guide to a perilous endgame, became Silas's sole focus. It led him, with an almost magnetic pull, towards Luxembourg, a city of quiet wealth and hidden secrets, and specifically to a forgotten bank vault. This was the location Thorne had been about to reveal, the repository of Kestrel's definitive evidence against Eleanor Vance. Silas moved with a renewed sense of urgency, every shadow a potential threat, every unfamiliar face a possible operative. Vance's network, honed over decades, was closing in. He navigated through bustling train stations and anonymous city streets, a phantom amidst the crowds, relying on instincts sharpened by years of clandestine operations. A near miss in a crowded market, a fleeting glimpse of a familiar surveillance technique in a rearview mirror, all served as stark reminders of the omnipresent danger. He had to be faster, smarter, more ruthless than his pursuers. He understood that Vance, a woman who had built an empire on betrayal, would incinerate anything and anyone who threatened her meticulously crafted facade of respectability. Finally, he stood before the unassuming facade of the old bank. The interior was a relic, a testament to a bygone era of discreet transactions and hushed secrets. Following Kestrel's intricate markings on the map, he located the specific safe deposit box, its aged brass gleaming faintly under the dim light. With a surge of anticipation mixed with apprehension, Silas retrieved the contents. Inside, nestled amongst meticulously organized documents and a small encrypted data drive, was a letter. It was addressed to him in Kestrel's familiar, precise handwriting. Silas's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The words, written with a quiet desperation, confirmed a devastating truth. Kestrel revealed that the young woman in the locket, the one whose faded photograph had stirred so many questions, was indeed his sister. She too had been an agent, a bright and promising operative, and a casualty of Project Nightingale. Her death, a direct consequence of Vance's treachery, had fueled Kestrel's relentless, personal quest for justice. His pursuit wasn't merely professional duty. It was a deeply personal crusade, a burning desire for vengeance for his lost family. This revelation struck Silas with the force of a physical blow. He understood Kestrel's unwavering resolve now, the fierce determination that had driven him to his own tragic end. It stemmed from a place of profound loss and injustice, a pain that mirrored Silas's own buried grief for fallen comrades and betrayed ideals. A powerful, unspoken bond formed between the living and the dead. A posthumous connection forged in shared sorrow and a common enemy. Kestrel had not just been his protégé, he had been a kindred spirit, a reflection of the man Silas once was, and perhaps yearned to be again. The rest of the safe deposit box's contents were equally damning. The encrypted drive contained Kestrel's definitive evidence against Vance, meticulously compiled financial records, intercepted communications, and sworn affidavits from former operatives, all meticulously detailing Vance's decades of corruption and manipulation. There was also a detailed plan of Vance's upcoming international negotiation, exposing her true intentions to manipulate the outcome for personal gain and a hidden communication device. This device, small and innocuous, was programmed to broadcast her confession, a final, devastating act of exposure. As Silas exited the bank, the weight of the evidence heavy in his satchel, he was met by a figure emerging from the shadows. Vance's lead operative, a ruthless and highly skilled assassin whose reputation preceded him, stood blocking his path. A cold smile played on the assassin's lips. "Silas," he murmured, his voice a low growl. "She knows you have it." The air crackled with unspoken threat. A brutal hand-to-hand combat sequence ensued, a desperate dance between two masters of their deadly craft. Silas, older but still formidable, fought with the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. Blows were exchanged, bones jarred, and blood was spilled. Wounded, but ultimately victorious, Silas watched as the assassin crumpled to the ground, his last breath a chilling whisper. "You're too late." The words hung in the air, a final, ominous warning. Silas, the assassin's chilling words echoing in his ears, pushed past the crumpled form, his body screaming in protest from the brutal encounter. Each step was a fresh agony, but the urgency of his mission propelled him forward. He had to reach a secure location, a place where he could activate the device without interference, before Vance could execute whatever last-ditch effort she had planned. His mind, though fogged with pain and exhaustion, was sharp, focused on the task. Kestrel's sacrifice, his sister's memory, Thorne's betrayal, all coalesced into a singular burning resolve. He found refuge in a nondescript, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a forgotten relic of a bygone industrial era. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, dancing shadows, adding to the grim atmosphere. With trembling hands, Silas pulled out the small communication device, its unassuming exterior belying its immense power. He connected it to a makeshift antenna he fashioned from discarded electrical components, a skill honed during countless clandestine operations. The device hummed to life, a faint blue light illuminating his bruised face. At that very moment, across the continent, Eleanor Vance, poised and elegant, stood at the podium of the international summit, her carefully crafted words weaving a tapestry of diplomacy and carefully veiled self-interest. The world leaders listened, captivated by her charisma, unaware of the storm about to break. Silas took a deep, ragged breath, his fingers hovering over the activation button. He pictured Kestrel, young and idealistic, full of hope for a better world. He remembered his sister, vibrant and alive, before Vance's machinations stole her future. With a silent prayer for justice, he pressed the button. A surge of energy coursed through the device, across the globe, on every television screen, every computer monitor tuned into the summit. Vance's image flickered, then was replaced by a grainy, yet undeniably clear, recording. Her voice, calm and detached, began to speak, detailing her calculated betrayals, her cold-blooded sacrifices, her insidious manipulation of international politics for personal gain. The evidence Kestrel had painstakingly collected, financial ledgers, intercepted communications, corroborating testimonies, scrolled across the screen, irrefutable proof of her decades-long treachery. A collective gasp rippled through the summit hall. Vance's carefully constructed facade shattered, her composure dissolving into a mask of disbelief, and then pure, unadulterated fury. Security rushed forward, but it was too late. The truth, unleashed by Silas, had spread like wildfire. The broadcast caused a global scandal of unprecedented proportions. Vance, her reputation in tatters, her power base evaporated, was immediately arrested, her diplomatic immunity rendered moot by the sheer weight of her crimes. Her carefully constructed empire of lies crumbled around her, exposed for the world to see. Silas watched the news reports from his secluded sanctuary, a quiet satisfaction settling in his heart. The pain in his body was still acute, but the torment in his soul had begun to recede. He had completed Kestrel's mission, brought justice to the fallen, and in doing so found a measure of peace he thought forever lost. The ghosts of his past, once so oppressive, now seemed to whisper not of regret, but of closure. His journey, however, was not over. No longer haunted by the specters of betrayal, Silas felt a new purpose ignite within him. He would dedicate his remaining years to exposing similar injustices, to shining a light into the darkest corners of power, supporting those who became victims of political machinations. He would become a quiet guardian, a sentinel against the shadows, ensuring that such betrayals were never forgotten, and hopefully, never repeated. Kestrel's sacrifice, once a tragic end, was now recognized as an act of profound courage. His name, once tarnished by the circumstances of his death, was cleared, his integrity restored. His memory became a symbol of unwavering truth in a world too often shrouded in deceit. The world, a little safer, a little more just, breathed a collective sigh of relief, all because of the actions of a dead man and the old agent who dared to follow his map. Silas, standing at the window of his quiet cabin, watched the sunrise paint the sky with hues of gold and rose. A faint smile touched his lips, a rare expression of contentment. The future, once a bleak expanse of solitude, now held the promise of a quiet resolve, a chance to live without the constant crushing weight of the past. The map had not only led him to justice, but to his own redemption.